Hello, everybody. And here we are once again. It's a Tuesday. You know what that means. Time for some NFL picks. And this time it is week number 15. For a lot of us, the beginning of our fantasy football playoffs. So, very, very important week in the overall context of the NFL, especially from a fan engagement point of view, because like fantasy football playoffs are big deals for the people that are watching the games at home. So it's a very big week, a very important week, and definitely want to improve on the performance that we had around these parts from last week, which was, in a word, um it's not a word, that's a gesture, but whatever. You get the idea. It wasn't exactly great around these parts last week. So we're going to turn that around and we're going to make things work. All right. So we're going to turn this on. We're going to skip that. We're going to do this thing that we always have to do, which is up that to like there, maybe. Make sure this has the right device, and it does. Start by doing that. Lovely, lovely. Everybody ready? Everybody ready for this wicked week 15? All right. Let's get this done. In 5, 4, 3. What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and welcome to week 15 of my weekly NFL football pick show for the 2023 NFL season and postseason. And speaking of the postseason, we are getting very, very close to the real NFL postseason. And for many people, this is the beginning of the fantasy football postseason. So, very critical week in the grand scheme of the NFL, especially from a fan engagement point of view. It's a big week. Speaking of big weeks, that's what I did not have in week 14. Your boy did not have a solid week last week in week 14. Underwater across the board. And we haven't had too many bad weeks in the NFL this season. Last week was probably the worst one that we've had all year. 6-9 straight up in 15 games. Like right from the jump, like 6-9 straight up, just picking who's going to win and who's not going to win. 6-9, not good enough. 131-77 now on the season, exactly 63%. Against the spread, 6-8-1. So that was better because we had the push in the lowest scoring and arguably most boring football game of all time. But we did have that one push, but still 6-8-1. Not where we want to be with the way that we have performed against the spread this season. Now 113-90-5 against the spread on the year. And on the totals, one game under at 7-8. It is what it is. I've had much worse weeks than that this season. So if there is a bright spot, maybe it was that. 96, 110-2 on the totals so far this year. And look, the problems were right in my primetime picks. It started off terribly on Thursday. I got reverse swept by the Steelers losing to the Patriots by 3. Didn't get them straight up, didn't get against the spread, didn't get the total. So the week started off terribly. It didn't get much better from there. The Chiefs lost to the Bills 20-17. That was my flex play last week. I did get the total on that one because I did tell you to stay under on that game. So at the very least, I did get that. Missed the other two. Dallas curb stomping the Philadelphia Eagles 33-13. I did pick that as a win, so I did get that straight up and against the spread, but I did tell you to take, what did I tell you to take there? I told you to go over 52.5 on the total, so that obviously didn't work out. And then I got reverse swept in both Monday Night Football games. Miami and Green Bay lose their respective Monday nighters by a single point to Tennessee if you're Miami, or 2 points if you're Green Bay to the New York Giants. So I missed everything there. Didn't get a spread play, didn't get a total because I told you to stay under on both of those games. They both go over. So it was just a bad week overall. Just, that. Taking a peek at the Bridgewater's finest straight up pick 'em pool, I moved down from 9th to 15th in that pool with just over 1,100 out of 1,658 possible confidence points. So it's a clip of 66.5%. Only brought in 39 of 120 possible confidence points. So what that means, all of my big hitters missed. Basically all of them. I had 6 correct. I got 39 points out of those 6. So what, that's an average of what, 6.5 points per correct pick? Bad. Like not good. Not good at all. So yeah, it was only 32.5%. It was terrible. Shout out to our week 14 winner, Deja Vu. Deja Vu going 10-5 last week, which in a minefield where 8 betting underdogs won their games straight up. I mean, 10-5 is a pretty damn good record. 84 of 120 possible confidence points for them. It is exactly 70%. And Jason remains our overall leader on the season. Now 134-74 on the season. So 3 picks better than me. 1,152 out of 1,658 possible confidence points. A clip of 69.5%, which does mean it's below that championship clip of 70%. If you're below 70% and you're the leader, this is still anybody's game. And we'll take a peek into Fantasy Corner, which is, of course, brought to you, presented by the Dynasty Trade Calculator. And if you go to the description of this live stream, you're going to find my affiliate link to the DTC, where for the price of a cup of coffee, you can join one of the absolute best resources available to you online for Dynasty, Keeper, and long-term fantasy football. Look, trade evaluations, player evaluations, rankings, podcasts. It does not matter what the configuration of your league is. Are you a super flex or a 2 quarterback? They got you covered. Tight end premium, they got you covered. Running back points per carry, they got you covered. Half PPR, full PPR, 16 team leagues, it does not matter. The DTC has got you covered. Check my affiliate link down below. Once again, for as little as the price of a cup of coffee, you can gain access to this incredible tool. I did have success last week, winning 5 of my 8 straight up matchups, and did move into 3rd place in one of my best ball leagues. So we're right in the playoff picture there in best ball as well. And an excellent week in Dynasty where I picked up wins in both the professionals and the Ante & Co. Dynasty fantasy football leagues. I beat Mitch in the professionals, which means I finished my regular season at 8-6, the number 6 seed in the playoffs. Of course, we have 8 teams that make the playoffs in that league out of 12. And in Ante & Co., I picked up a very close win against Justine, but I did get the win to get to double digits on the season at 10-4. That had me secure the number 2 seed in Ante & Co. this season. Feeling really good about my odds there. That sets me up with playoff quarterfinal matchups against Anthony in the professionals and Carmine in Ante & Co. So this will be my 3rd time this season playing both of those teams. With Anthony, I think he blew me out early in the season. I got a win against him, I believe, late this year. And this is a really close matchup. It's a projected win for me right now, but I still got a lot of work to do in that one. The matchup with Carmine, even though it's a 2 versus 7 matchup, this one's too close to call. It's within a margin of a couple of points. So that is going to be a dogfight in Ante & Co. I can't wait for it. It's the fantasy football playoffs. It is super, super exciting. Can't wait to get started. And I'll take this opportunity to remind you, as I always do, that if you go to the description of this live stream, the VOD, the podcast episode, however you interact with this show, you're going to find all my results from last week, all my straight up against the spread and over under plays for week 15 in the NFL. You're going to find information on joining the Bridgewater's finest straight up pick'em pool for season 12 of this show. And you're going to find information on joining the NFL YouTube Prognosticators Facebook page. Now, here's what we do. Here's what happens. Very clearly, like I said, we had a bad week last week. You know what we do? We reload and we fire again. That was my philosophy all year long when I was struggling in the CFL, a league that I traditionally I'm not going to mince words. I kind of dominate in the CFL, and I have in that space for a couple of years. Wasn't the case this year. I had to scratch and claw my way up from terrible, terrible start to the season. And that's what we had. That was the mindset that we had to go into every single week. You had a down week, you reload, and you go again. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing in the NFL here. Let's kick things off for week 15. Obviously, we are no bye weeks left in this season. We're going to be full 16 game slates from here on out, and most of these games matter. Like, it's obviously still way too early in the season for most of these games not to. The playoff picture is still wide, wide, wide open. And we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be obviously be integrating that into what we're talking about, looking at the playoff pictures in the AFC and NFC. And at least as of right now, I'm taking the philosophy that it's probably going to take double digits to make the playoffs. I don't think too many 9-8 teams are going to get in. I think it's going to take 10 wins. 10 it's are already at 10 wins in both conferences, like the top teams, and only one team in the NFL, that's the San Francisco 49ers, have punched their ticket to the postseason. There's still 31 teams there. A lot of them can't make it, but a lot of them can. So there is absolutely nothing that has been decided up to this point. However, we are going to kick things off this week with a matchup that basically does have no playoff implication. That is our Thursday night football game with the Los Angeles Chargers in Vegas to take on the Raiders. A battle of Aiden O'Connell at quarterback on one side and Easton Hockey Stick, Pick a Flick. What's the kid's name? I think it's Easton Stick. Unfortunately, we got the bad news last week that another superstar player, another superstar quarterback has gone down for the rest of the season, and that is Justin Herbert. He obviously has a hand injury, had surgery on his thumb. Schefter announced earlier today he is going to IR. That is going to end his season, and I don't think the Chargers are going to make some miraculous run to the playoffs. Obviously, they haven't been mathematically eliminated, so it's not impossible. But again, even if they win out at this point, they only get to 9-8. And again, I don't think 9-8 is going to make too many playoff spots. For the Raiders may be coming into this game without the services of their top running back, which is Josh Jacobs. He's dealing with a quad injury. We're talking about soft tissue injuries and combining that with a short week. So soft tissue, short week, it doesn't necessarily bode well for him. I'm going to lean out for Josh Jacobs in the run game. So we're talking about two superstar players, one on each side, that really, I think, limits the offensive upside of this game. We're talking about like a what I think is a real stinky quarterback matchup. Like I talked about it last week a little bit, but I'm going to reiterate it here and now. I was absolutely right about Aiden O'Connell. And I said it about a month ago that the Aiden O'Connell experiment was done. Not to say that he's never going to be a good player or never going to be a good quarterback or I dislike him personally. It's got nothing to do with him personally. It's got everything to do with he's not ready to be a full-time NFL quarterback. And that's why I was saying, and I was advocating it a month ago, Jimmy G is healthy. Jimmy G should be playing. Aiden O'Connell should be behind Jimmy G, learning how to be a pro. Aiden O'Connell was a day 3 draft pick. Not every day 3 draft pick, and I put this on Twitter, not every day 3 draft pick is going to turn into Brock Purdy. Like, that's just not the way it works. That's the way you want it to happen, especially if you're a fan, but it's just not the way it works. And I personally have not been impressed with almost anything that I've seen from Aiden O'Connell. I think Aiden O'Connell has had maybe 2 good games, probably 1. And it's just not there. It would have been like if the Packers would have thrown Jordan Love right out there in the 2021 season or whatever. Like, he's clearly not ready to be an NFL quarterback. Give him an opportunity to play behind a veteran for a couple of years. In any case, that's my Aiden O'Connell rant. So we're starting this episode off real strong. Look, very low total in this game, only at 34, and that's obviously reflective of the fact that Herbert's not going to be playing, and I think there's a pretty good chance that Josh Jacobs doesn't play in that game as well. Boy, the spread almost made me want to lean towards the Chargers, because like the Chargers have been the walking wounded for like half of the season. Like even their healthy players aren't healthy. Like the team's just been snake bitten. But the Raiders come into this game as 3-point favorites at home. So do I know that the Raiders are definitively 3 points better than the Chargers right now? I don't know that that's definitively the case, because look, this Raiders offense is bad. Like it's a bad offense. But I think where they do get the edge in this matchup, even though no disrespect to the Chargers, they've been playing well on this side of the ball. I think the Raiders have the edge here on the defensive side, and I think that's what ultimately winds up winning the day for them. I'm going to take the Raiders defense to win this game. Not the Raiders as a whole. I'm going to take the Raiders defense specifically to win this football game. So let's take Vegas to get the win in Vegas over the Chargers. Against the spread, like I said, the Raiders are laying -3. I'm taking them to win. It's right on the edge of my small price to pay. So I guess I got to lay those 3 points. I don't love it, but I'm going to go ahead and lay the -3 on the Raiders. Total in this game set at 34 points. Have to take the under. This game might crack 30. But I'm looking at like a 20-10. Like this is one of those, like, can we get to the end of this game as quickly as possible? I don't think this is going to be much for offense. So let's take the under. Let's go 20-10 in favor of the Raiders. Raiders win, Raiders cover. Give me the under. Let's see. We got Andrew Warren in the chat here saying Vegas probably got a flawless victory in week 14. I would say so, because look, when favorites do well, the public does well. When the favorites don't do well, Vegas does well. So I would assume that that Vegas probably did real well in week 14. Martin, crazy week, 8 upsets. Absolutely. Brian, Houston, New York was the game that did me in, just down a bit, but had some good parlays that would have paid if Houston would have won. Yeah. Speaking of snake bitten teams, I mean, my God, everything about Houston's offense that made them special is like not healthy right now. It absolutely sucks. Got to say, I'm not a big fan of the matchups this week. Potentially a big week for upsets. That's from Brian as well. Andrew, no Justin Herbert, no victory for the Chargers, and O'Connell is still in babality form. Nice. So for the benefit of those listening to the podcast, I'm wearing a Mortal Kombat shirt. So Andrew, with a delicious Mortal Kombat pun there to kick us off nice and early. We are going to go ahead, Andrew, and that's the early one out of the gate for comment of the week. So we're gonna go ahead and pin that bad boy. All right, let's go through some quickies here. And look, every game that we're about to talk about, at least the next 3 that we're going to talk about, all I think have pretty serious playoff implications. The Minnesota Vikings on the road traveling to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Minnesota is on the tail end of back-to-back road games coming into this one. And this is a battle of 2 teams who are at 7 wins. So, yeah, one's in the NFC, one's in the AFC, but 7 wins, you're kind of getting into that territory where you want to start thinking about like figuring out how to play your best ball and in a hurry, because 7 wins with 4 weeks left, again, you want to try to get to that double digits. It's going to be tough to be able to justify losing a game, especially if it's in this week. So this is a exceptionally important matchup, I believe, for both of these teams. Very unfortunate that Minnesota is going to be going into this game half loaded, if you will. First of all, before we even talk about the injuries, Minnesota has already announced that Josh Dobbs will not be the starting quarterback this week. I believe they're turning to Nick Mullins. I like the upside with Dobbs more than I like the upside with Nick Mullins. I guess I understand why they're doing it. I think maybe Mullins's floor might be a little bit higher, but it wouldn't be the choice that I'm making as long as Dobbs is actually healthy. I mean, if Dobbs isn't healthy, then the decision's made for you. But if they're both healthy, I think I would skew with Josh Dobbs. But speaking of healthy, a couple players on the Vikings that are not healthy. Jay Jettas, he's re-injured himself, this time a rib injury. They had to take him to the hospital last week. I would say he's 50-50 to play, can probably play with like some painkillers and a flat jacket. I don't know that there's anything fractured or broken or anything like that. I haven't seen a report indicating that. but he's obviously not going to be in this game at 100%. And then you look at Alexander Mattison at the running back position. He's dealing with an ankle injury. It's likely a high ankle sprain. I would imagine he misses probably the next 2 weeks at least dealing with that. And depending on where the Vikings sit in the playoff picture at that time, they might look at shutting Mattison down for the rest of the year. Look, teams that are on the tail end of back-to-back road games have really been struggling this season. I think straight up they're right around 40% or something like that. They may even be a little bit below 40% winning those games straight up. It's tough enough to win on the road as it is, but especially when you're in that second straight road game. This year, more than most others, it's really been a thing. So I think I got to skew on the Bengals here. I got to say one thing about the Bengals. I've been very, very impressed with Browning at quarterback. I think he has played a couple of really, really excellent games in the last couple of weeks that have put the Bengals right back in a position where, yeah, the division is out of reach, but the wild card is still right there. And after losing Joe Burrow, the wild card should not still be there for them, but it is. That's a credit to Browning at the quarterback position and that whole team. Obviously, that whole team effort has been really big. The offense is pretty efficient right now. They're scoring their points. I'm going to lean on the Bengals here. Let's take Cincinnati at home to get the win over Minnesota. On the line, the Bengals are laying 3.5 points here as a home favorite. I think I'm going to go ahead and lay those points as well. I don't love buying the hook in matchups that I think are pretty close, which I think this one is, but I'm going to go ahead and buy it anyway. I feel pretty comfortable about it considering the injuries to the Vikings. Total in this game set at 39.5. I think I got to skew under on this one again, even though the Bengals offense has been pretty efficient lately. I don't necessarily see a ton of yardage in this game, and the Vikings, got to give them credit. Their defense has been playing pretty lights out football lately. So I think that keeps this score lower. Let's go under 39.5 points in Cincinnati, Minnesota, but I'm going to go like a 23-13, something like that. Should be a fairly comfortable win for Cincinnati. They win, they cover, and give me the under. Another matchup between two 7-win teams has the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road in Indianapolis taking on the Colts. Now, this one has a little bit of a different context, obviously, because these are two AFC teams. These are two teams fighting for the same playoff spots. So, again, very, very critical game for both of these teams. Neither one of them wants to wind up on the losing end of this thing and really have an uphill struggle starting next week to try to make the playoffs. The Steelers have the benefit of the long week having played on Thursday, but one of the more embarrassing performances, I think, for the Pittsburgh Steelers on the offensive side. I think they're right back to being one of the most dreadful offenses in the AFC, if not all of football. And I don't necessarily think their defense is playing as good as it was earlier in the year. This defense is still very good. Very good. Don't get me wrong. TJ Watt's a little banged up. This is still a very, very good defense. And when you look on Indianapolis's side, their defense has been bad at for long swaths of this season, but the last little bit they haven't been playing too bad. They've actually been playing fairly solid and fairly solid on both sides of the ball. No real significant injuries to talk about here. Apparently, there's a possibility that Jonathan Taylor might play. I can't imagine Jonathan Taylor being ready for this game, so I assume it's going to be another Zach Moss game. Even if, whether it is or it isn't, I still feel pretty good about the Colts in this one. I think I'm going to lean on Indianapolis to get the win here at home. If the game was in Pittsburgh, I'd probably lean a different way, but let's take the Colts at home to get the win over the Steelers. On the line, Indianapolis is laying 2.5 points here as a home favorite. I like them to win. It's a small price to pay. Let's lay the minus 2.5 on Indianapolis. Total in the game set at 42 points. I got to stick under on this one again. It's our third straight under, but I just not seeing a ton of points scored here in these early games. I'm looking at this like a 23-16, something like that. I think we'll lean 23-16 in favor of the Colts. So Colts win, Colts cover, and give me the under on the points. I don't think it cracks 40. And then we have the Denver Broncos traveling to Detroit to take on the Lions. The Broncos sitting at 7 wins, but still competitive in their division, still competitive, obviously, right in the thick of the AFC playoff race. Coming into this game on their third consecutive road game. So, obviously, we talked about teams on the back to back, not great. Teams on their third straight road game, even worse. So, a big uphill battle here for the Broncos, taking on a Detroit Lions team, 9 wins. They're in the driver's seat in their division. They got to feel pretty good about certainly where the offense is at right now. Definitely have to feel good about where the offense is. This defense, I feel like I've talked about it for the last couple of weeks, and I think I have. This Lions defense is not good. I have very little faith. I have almost the least amount of faith league wide in this Lions defense right now. And part of the reason for that is I know they should be better. They should be better on paper. They've shown flashes of being better, but right now I think they're playing some of their worst football of the season. Not necessarily the worst, but pretty darn close to it. And again, should certainly be better. And that's kind of what's lent itself to some of these overs is they're really struggling to keep points off the board. What are we looking at here in the last four? Bottom 5 in efficiency, bottom 5 in points allowed. So again, this Lions team struggling on the defensive side of the ball. And what we can say about the Broncos have been playing some of their most consistent football of the season, and it's on both sides. They're an efficient offense, they're an efficient defense that bends but does not break. They do not give up a ton of points on the board. I smell an upset here. I think the Denver Broncos go into Detroit and beat the Lions this week. I think they're good enough to do it. I'm not just saying that because Russell Wilson is one of my dynasty quarterbacks. I have a really good feeling about the Denver Broncos this week picking up a win. So let's go ahead and take the Broncos on the road in Detroit to get the win over the Lions. So obviously, Detroit's laying 4.5 points here as a home favorite. I like Denver to win, so give me the plus 4.5 in the upset. Total in this game set at 47.5. I think this is a really, really good number. This is a very marginal over for me, but I'm going to go over the 47.5 point total just by this much. So let's go over 47.5, 27-21 in favor of the Denver Broncos. Broncos win. Broncos cover the plus 4.5 and give me the over on the points. I saw the stream stutter there. Everybody still with me? Just going to hang on here until I get some confirmation in the chat that everything is still good. I am. Okay, good. Excellent. And the Chicago Bears on the road in Cleveland taking on a Browns team that are sitting at 8 wins and look like they're going to be quarterbacked by Joe Flacco here the rest of the way. Kevin Stefanski was asked pointedly about his quarterback situation, and even though they did move Flacco back down to the practice squad yesterday, that's more of like a perfunctory move. Like they just didn't sign him to the active roster. So I think that's procedural. I think they have to send him back down if they're not going to sign him to the active roster yet. I think that's still an option for them. I think they probably wind up doing that for the rest of the year. I think this is Joe Flacco's team moving forward. Obviously, he led them last week, had a pretty solid performance. And man, can we talk about the possibility of putting him in the conversation for comeback player of the year? Because who thought that a team's playoff hopes were going to be resting on the shoulders of 416-year-old Joe Flacco in 2023? It totally blows me away. But look, he proved it. He proved he was able to do it. The Chicago Bears obviously not fighting for anything playoff wise. They've probably locked up the first overall pick, not because of their record, but because of the absolute ineptitude of the Carolina Panthers. So got to feel good to know that regardless of whether they, win, lose, draw, whatever, they've probably got a top 2, top 3 pick right there, if not the first overall. That's got to feel really good for them. On Cleveland's side, now part of what has propelled Cleveland, if anything, has been the defense for most of this season. Most of the season, this Browns defense has been looked at as, top half of the league, pretty solid, definitely better than some of their competitors. I can't exactly say that that's the case over the last four. Over the last four, they're actually one of the least efficient defenses in the NFL, bottom five in my defensive efficiency stat. And they're going to be without one of their starting safeties this week. Grant Delpit, he injured his groin last week. He's likely going to land on IR. That's probably going to end his regular season. He might be available to come back for the playoffs, but chances are we're not going to see Grant Delpit again this year. And that is a big blow to that secondary. And say what you will about the Chicago Bears. They have not been good. They've not been good this year. But they're a 5-win team that's definitely been playing better as of late, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They've actually been a pretty darn stout defense over the last month or so. This is another one where I'm smelling that upset here, I think. I like the Chicago Bears on the road to go into Cleveland and upset the Browns. So second straight upset here. I like Chicago to beat Cleveland. On the line, the Browns are laying -3.5 here as the home favorite. I like Chicago to win. Give me the +3.5 on the Bears. This might have been a hedge because that's another line where I don't love buying that extra half point, buying that extra hook. So I might have hedged here, even though that's a terrible hedge. But I like the Bears to win, so give me the +3.5. Total in the game, 37.5. Another pretty good total, I think. I'm going to skew under on it just by the slightest of margins. I'm going to go like 20-17 here in favor of the Bears. So Chicago wins. Chicago covers +3.5, obviously, and give me the under barely on the 37.5 point total. All right, let's take a pop over to the Packers game here. Green Bay is going to be at home this week, playing host to the Tampa Bay Bucks. Now, the Bucks are on the tail end of back-to-back road games, and they're a team like Green Bay that are sitting at 6 wins. Now, obviously, the context of this is a little bit different because 6 wins for Tampa Bay means that they're co-leading their division because that division is bad. It's a 3-team tie right now with 6 wins. So somebody is going to emerge out of that pile and win the division and go to the playoffs. Tampa Bay has just as good a chance at that as anybody, and regardless of what happens this week, like they've still got that shot. Green Bay sitting at 6 wins, the division is not in reach for them. Like what's that? Detroit's at 9. So I mean, if Green Bay has to win out and hope that Detroit loses out, basically. So I don't think the division is in the conversation here for the Packers. The wild card is, and it would have been more strongly in the conversation had they not dropped a very winnable game against the New York Giants. That was not a good performance last week. It was a regression for Jordan Love. Part of that was the defense. I think the Giants defense had a really, really strong game, but it was the run D. We've been talking about the run defense since the 2021 NFC Championship game. Like we've been talking about their run defense for almost 3 years now. Like when is it going to be fixed? And people are going to scream it's going to be fixed when they fire Joe Barry. It's more than the coordinator, man. It's up here. The coordinator is a big part of it, but it's up here. I think their pass rush is great for the Packers, but that has not translated to anything better than like a bottom 10 run defense. It's great. They got to figure out how to stop the run if they really want to take that step forward back into what I would call true contention. Where might we see that next year? Who knows? But it's worth pointing out, Packers are coming into this game obviously on the short week, having just played on Monday night, one of the dueling Monday night games. So short week versus, tail end of back-to-back road games. It's an interesting kind of dynamic there. The Bucks will technically have the rest advantage, but having been on the road for 2 weeks, do we really say it? This is a really interesting matchup. I genuinely feel top to bottom that the Green Bay Packers are the better team. I really do, especially on the defensive side. I definitely think their defense is better than Tampa Bay, certainly playing better than Tampa Bay's right now. I think I'm going to skew on the defensive side. Let's take the Packers at home to get a win over the Bucks. The Packers defense, or the Packers schedule, sorry, the rest of the way is pretty gettable. I think there's 3 wins there. I really do. Is that enough to make the playoffs? I've been saying probably not. We'll have to see. But I think the only way to get there is by a win this week. So let's lean on the Packers to beat the Bucks. On the line, Green Bay is laying -3.5. Again, I don't love buying that extra hook, but I think we're going to go ahead and lay the -3.5 because, again, it's just a bad hedge one way or the other. Total in this game set at 41.5 points. Another pretty good, like our third straight, like pretty darn good total. I think this is right about where this lands. I'm going to take the over in this one, and I'm going to go 24-20 in favor of the Packers. So Packers win, Packers cover marginally, and give me the over on the points. But this is a really interesting matchup for them. Let's see. Steelers Colts round 1 fight. Go. Pittsburgh's looked horrible in their last 2 games. That comes from Brian. Absolutely. Steelers defense is Scorpion, but their offense is Johnny Cage. Okay, Andrew, now you're trying too hard. Now you're trying too hard, my friend. Let's see. Raiders still lose to quarterbacks no one knows. That one comes from Martin. Hello, my friend. Thank you for joining us this week. Lions defense is going back where they were a year ago. Let's see. Joe Flacco going for another Super Bowl run. I mean, maybe. What a story that would be. Incredible. If anything, Chicago better hope Carolina loses the rest of the way. I mean, Carolina's so bad. Like, they got a 2-game cushion here for that first overall pick. Carolina, trust me, they want to win. They want to win out. They don't want to have that first overall pick because it ain't theirs, it's somebody else's. So, like, trust me, they want to win. It's a matter of can they. And we got Tyler in the chat giving us a stat. Excellent. Dolphins versus Titans. Did you know this fun fact? In the last 20 seasons, teams were previously 3 and 2,074 when down 14 plus points in the final 3 minutes. That seems about right. Whew. Crazy. LA Rabbit just with a laughing face. I can see I'm going to be taking a few alternate spreads all these games. You know what? The alternate spreads, I've been putting together some a couple of parlays for my my good buddy Chris Carter on FanDuel, and the alternate spreads on those parlays, the parlays themselves haven't hit, but both the alternate spreads I've done have. So alternate spreads are definitely nice little parlay builders. Gotta love them. All right, let's do some more quickies here. Division matchup of the AFC South, the Houston Texans traveling to Tennessee to take on the Titans. Titans obviously got a big last minute come from behind win on Monday night. They're coming into this game on the short week. The Texans are coming in on the tail end of back-to-back road games. Houston is a 7-win football team, which means they're right there. They're right there for the division. They're right there in the wild card conversation, but they're probably going to have to do it without another one of their top receiving options and arguably their number 1 quarterback. So look, Nico Collins at wide receiver, he's dealing with a calf injury. Usually wouldn't think maybe it's that big of a deal, but it's a repeat injury for him. It's the second time this year that he's been dealing with a calf injury. So I would say he's likely out, because if you don't adequately heal these things, they become more frequent, and they do also make you more susceptible to torn Achilles. So that's obviously worst case scenario for him. I'd be very surprised if Nico Collins plays this week. And then, of course, CJ Stroud. Stroud's in concussion protocol. I think they're going to probably play it safe with him, even though they're right in the midst of this playoff race. I would be very surprised to see CJ Stroud, which means it's probably going to be Davis Mills getting the start this week. And look, I was kind of on the choo-choo Davis Mills train last season. Insofar as I thought he was better than most other people thought he was, and that's because most other people thought he was dog water. And I don't think he was dog water. I think he was certainly better than that. However, I don't love the prospects of him playing very meaningful games down the stretch when you have CJ Stroud. If Stroud passes concussion protocol, Stroud should play. If they want to be super safe, maybe they keep him out and maybe it is Davis Mills this week. One way or the other, look, Tennessee might have pulled that incredible comeback last week. Tennessee's not a good football team. There's nothing about them strikes me as a good football team, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I think this defense is gettable even for Davis Mills. Give me the Houston Texans here. Tennessee are the favorites at home, but even considering the injuries, give me the Houston Texans to win this game outright. They're the better football team in my mind, top to bottom. So give me them to win this game outright, and give me Houston plus 2.5 against the spread, as Tennessee are marginal home favorites. Total in this game set at 37.5 points. This is another one where I feel there's going to be an under. I've only taken a couple of overs so far, but I'm feeling an under here in Houston and Tennessee. So let's go under the 37.5 point total. Let's go like 17-16 in favor of Houston. So Houston wins. Houston covers the plus 2.5, and give me the under on the points. The New York Jets traveling to Miami to take on the Dolphins, two teams going in opposite directions after last week. The Jets, obviously, with that big win against the aforementioned Houston Texans, I think they beat them, 30-6, something like that. Easily the Jets' best offensive showing, maybe all year. Like, just the most dangerous they've looked as a team offensively. And it came last year against the Texans team that basically lost everybody on the offensive side. And the Miami Dolphins, obviously coming into this game on the short week, having lost that Monday night game miraculously 28-27 to the Tennessee Titans. So the Miami Dolphins are still a 9-win football team. And yeah, they've got problems on the offensive line. Every bit of that game that I watched, Tua Tagovailoa was running for his life. I put some extra spaces in the middle there. Running for his life. I don't know what that O-line was doing the entirety of that game, but it sure as hell was not pass blocking, because my God, Tua didn't have a minute to himself. And of course, they looked really discombobulated when Tyreek Hill went out of the game. So the health of Tyreek Hill will be a big part of this game. However, another big part of this game are named Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. So, I really, really believe that the Miami Dolphins are in a great bounce back position in this one. Yes, it's a division matchup and anything can happen. Give me the Dolphins here outright. I think they win this game pretty darn convincingly. This is going to be a crummy weather game. There's going to be high winds. There's rains coming. So low scoring game, we'll put it that way. And even though Miami are pretty massive favorites in this one at -8.5, I'm still going to tell you to lay those points and still tell you to take the under despite the weather. So -8.5 on the Miami Dolphins. I think they win big. And give me the under on the 39.5 point total, considering the weather. Let's go like 24-10 in favor of the Dolphins. 2-possession win. They cover the -8.5 and give me the under on the points. The big thing for the Dolphins here is that number 1 seed in the AFC is still in sight. Baltimore's got 10, they've got 9. It's still right there. So they've definitely still got to play this thing like the number 1 seed is still achievable for them, because it very much is. The Kansas City Chiefs traveling to New England to take on the Patriots. The Patriots come into this game on the long week, so they've had the extra couple of days to rest and prepare, coming off a 21-18 win against the Pittsburgh Steelers, where Bailey Zappe steps in and throws 3 touchdown passes and wins the game. Like, I still don't think Bailey Zappe is like an everyday starting NFLer, but he's shown flashes of it. He absolutely has. You threw 3 touchdown passes in an NFL game. Like, that's flashes that you belong. And we saw flashes of it last year, but we've hit that point in the season where everybody starts talking about Bailey Zappe like he's a full-time NFLer. I just don't feel that. I just don't believe that personally. Kansas City Chiefs, they're sitting at 8 wins. They should still control their own destiny in terms of the playoffs, but It's just crazy to think like it's week 15 and we're talking about whether or not the Chiefs control their own destiny to make the playoffs. Not the number one seed, to make the playoffs. 'Tis the reality of the league in 2023. Anybody can be got. And by the way, for Patrick Mahomes and for Andy Reid and for anybody that's still mad about that call on Monday night, there's one person to be mad at, and he wears number 19 in red. He's offside. Sorry about it. It was a penalty that was called. What do you want? I tell you what they want. What they really, really want. Had to do it. They really, really, really want to win. And they're really, 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 really going to. Look, as much as the Chiefs have struggled lately, they're still going to win out and finish 12-5. Like, look at their schedule. They're going to win out and be 12-5. So they're still going to be right there with a top seed in the AFC. That's my feelings on it anyway. I think all of the rest of their games for the rest of the season are very winnable. I think they're games they absolutely should win. And I think they finish the season 12-5. What can I say? That's what I think is going to happen. And it starts this week by absolutely clobbering the Patriots. So on the line, the Patriots are taking plus 9.5 here as home dogs. I like Kansas City to win, and I think Kansas City covers this number. I think there's some anger and frustration that Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs are going to take out on the poor Patriots, even though New England's defense has been playing as one of the absolute best in the league over the last month or so. All the credit in the world to them on the defensive side because the numbers look great. It just ain't going to be their week this week. We're going to go like 28-6. I'm still going to take the under on this total, under 37 points, because like the Chiefs are only scoring 21 a game over the last month, and they've been struggling offensively. So I'm not just immediately going to be like, yeah, it's going to get into the 50s. Give me an easy over. We're still going to take the under because I don't know what we're going to get from the Patriots on the offensive side. This may still be, like I called them before, maybe the worst offense we've ever seen. So let's take the under on that one, under 37. 28-6 is my final. Kansas City wins, and Kansas City covers the minus 9.5. And we got the New York Giants in New Orleans taking on the Saints. Now, the Giants obviously coming off that Monday night win, what was it, 24-22, I believe, win over the Green Bay Packers. New Orleans sitting with 6 wins on the season, which means they're still technically in the playoff conversation. Obviously, with the division that they're in, they're still in the conversation for their division. But boy, who's the quarterback for that team? Who's it going to be? Because it looks like nobody wants it to be Derek Carr. It seems like Derek Carr might not want it to be Derek Carr. I mean, like, yeah, you know, man, I had a lot of rib injuries this year, stuff that I didn't even really report or tell anybody. What are you trying to get crippled? Like why are you not reporting injuries? Why are you not like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, yeah, haha, the memes. He looks like the Undertaker with the friggin' eye makeup on. Like, I get it. But, like, does this guy want to be the quarterback for this team? Does this guy want to be a quarterback in the NFL? Period. And again, there's a lot of people that think he's not the answer at number one. They think it's Jameis Winston. I'm like, okay, I don't necessarily know that that's the answer either. But who do you think is the number one quarterback for the Saints? It feels like it's become a more legitimate question as the season rolls on. Saints, I don't think they do anything really, like, they don't really do much of anything that stands out to me. And sometimes that can be a good thing, and sometimes it's a bad thing. Sometimes it means they don't do anything remarkable. And I kind of think that's where I land on this team. I think they've got a good roster that plays average football most of the time. The New York Giants, I'm getting a little sick of this Tommy DeVito stuff, but I can't argue the result. Can't argue the result that they won last week. And I can't argue the result that offensively and defensively, the New York Giants over the last month are one of the most efficient teams in football. Offensively, top 5 in efficiency. They don't get a lot of yardage, but they're still putting up 20 and a half points a game. Defensively, they give up a ton of yardage, but they're not giving up as many points as the yardage they give up would indicate. And we saw that in the Packers game on Monday night against a team in Green Bay that had been a pretty efficient offense up to that point. The Giants were able to stifle that. I think the New York Giants play spoiler here, and I think the Giants go into New Orleans and beat the Saints in New Orleans. Give me the upset. The New York Giants behind Tommy DeVito gets the win and beats the New Orleans Saints. On the line, the Saints are laying 6 points here as a home favorite. I get why they're laying this many, but obviously I'm taking the Giants in the upset. So give me the +6. This feels like a pretty good hedge either way, but I'm taking the +6 because I like the Giants to win. Total in the game set at 37 and a half points. I don't think this game gets to 35. I think it barely gets above 30, to be perfectly honest. Give me like a 17-14 last second field goal win for the Giants for a second week in a row. New York wins. New York covers the +6 and give me under on the 37 and a half point total. Let's see. Houston can't get a break, or anyone from Ohio State, to say the least. 30-6 after you predicted just about the opposite last week. Yeah, exactly. Crazy. I hope Stroud passes concussion protocol. Me too. Tyreek Hill is hurt with his ankle, but I think he's questionable. If the Jets want to win, bring back Aaron Rodgers. Again, I don't think they're going to bring Rodgers back now that they're basically out of the playoff race. I don't think you see him again this year, but I'm trying not to speculate too much on that. Andrew, I agree. KC may go 12-5. They're so angry that lightning will flash like Raiden. Can I ban you? No, I'm kidding, Andrew. I'm kidding. No upset in the New England game. Derek Carr is trying to be the American badass Undertaker. Yeah. He seems like he's trying to be anything but a capable and competent NFL quarterback. There's going to be some Saints fans that are going to light me up for saying that, but whatever. Do your worst. All right. The Sunday night football game sees the Baltimore Ravens travel to Jacksonville to take on the Jags. This is another game right off the top that's going to be impacted likely by the weather. A lot of rain, high winds coming in this one. They don't have any protection in like a dome or anything like that. So this will be a wind and weather impacted game. Or at least it's looking that way. The Baltimore Ravens have the inside track now to the number 1 seed in the AFC, sitting with 10 wins. Jacksonville sitting with 8, probably in the driver's seat in their division, although they got a couple of 7-win teams sitting right behind them, so they really cannot afford to give up too much room. Ravens are likely going to be coming into this game without one of their top safeties. That is Kyle Hamilton. He is dealing with a knee injury. It's an MCL sprain. Chances are he's likely out for the next couple of weeks at the very least, if not more than that. That's definitely a hit to a Ravens defense that for most of this season has been playing pretty darn well. Although over the last month, they've been downright average, I would say. They're giving up more yardage than they were before, giving up more points than they were before. Currently bottom 10 in the NFL in efficiency over the last month. So certainly don't love that, especially as we're moving towards the playoffs. But Jacksonville, I've said it about them before. I feel like this is a painfully average football team. Their offense is playing pretty well right now. Top 10 across the board in efficiency, yards per game, and points per game. But then you look on the defensive side, they're giving up a lot of yardage, they're giving up a lot of points. So bit of a glass cannon, but once again, average football. That's what all that I've seen from the Jags all year long is average football. Average to me does not often beat special or great. And that is what I think this Baltimore Ravens team is. I think this is a special football team. I think it's a great football team. and that's why I'm on the Ravens this week. Ravens go to Jacksonville and beat the Jags. On the line, Baltimore laying -3.5 on the road. Let's try that again. Baltimore laying -3.5 points on the road. Sorry about that. Uh, I got to lay those 3.5. They're a team that I'll buy that hook on, that I'll buy that extra point. We'll go ahead and lay the -3.5 on Baltimore. Total in the game set at 43.5. Obviously, I'm sticking on the under in this one. This is probably going to be a run-based game. So that balanced running attack of the Baltimore Ravens versus Travis Etienne for the Jacksonville Jaguars going to make for a very interesting dynamic in this one. Going to stay under on it. Don't think it gets to 40. Let's go 24-14 in favor of the Baltimore Ravens, who win, cover, and hit under on the points. Andrew in the chat saying bad weather football games are the best. I tend to agree. All right, 4 quickies here before we get into the Monday Night Football game, the singular Monday Night Football game this week. Thank God. So we're going to start with the Atlanta Falcons in Carolina to take on the Panthers. So obviously, I've been backing the Panthers pretty heavily for most of the season, and it has paid me off not at all, because I think their one win this year was not a game that I predicted them to win. So, what are you going to do? A number of my losses have been laid at the feet of the Carolina Panthers. The Atlanta Falcons on the road in this game, obviously they're a 6-win team, but they're right there, obviously, for that division, because that division is stinky this season. Not a good division at all. Atlanta, another team that I think is playing pretty average football, but it's worth pointing out their defense, top 10 in efficiency over the last 4 games. We certainly enjoy that. Meanwhile, the Carolina Panthers are basically a hard fade. I think they're doing some good things on the defensive side, but my God, that offense. Bryce Young just either doesn't have the pieces to figure it out or just hasn't figured it out at this point. And you know what? Sometimes that happens. He's the first overall pick. They got to have some patience with him. I'm sure that they will. Yeah, they're going to lose this game, though. I'm definitely on the Atlanta Falcons here. And look, Atlanta's been one of the least reliable betting favorites in my mind for the last, 5 years I've been doing this. Like, they're right up there with the Chargers, but I feel really good about them this week. Let's take the -3 that the Atlanta Falcons are favored by, take the Falcons to win the game outright, and cover the -3. Total in the game set at 34.5, super low total, but once again, this is going to be a weather impacted game. High winds, rain is likely, so I gotta stay under on it again. I don't see this game getting to 30. Brian is pointing out in the chat, I have a lot of unders so far, and I absolutely do. But again, now we're starting to get into that point where weather is going to start playing a factor. I think this one sticks under as well. I don't think it gets to 30. Let's go under 34.5 points, 20-9 in favor of the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons win, Falcons cover, under on the points. The Washington Commanders will travel to LA to take on a Rams team that is playing some of their best football on the season up to this point. It didn't translate for them last week, but look, this Rams team is playing really solid football, especially on the offensive side. They are top 5 across the league in the last 4 games in terms of offensive efficiency, yards per game, points per game. This offense is clicking on all cylinders, and they're facing a Commanders team that might be the worst defense in the NFL right now, giving up a ton of points, 37.5, in fact, on average over their last 4 games, a ton of yardage. Their efficiency is in the toilet. They've done some okay things on the offensive side of the ball, but that is not going to be anywhere near enough against a Rams team that's fighting for their playoff lives. So we're definitely on the LA Rams. That's one of my most confident picks this week is the LA Rams keeping slim playoff hopes alive with a win at home against Washington, even though Washington's coming into this game fresh off their bye. So Rams are laying -6.5 here at home. It's under a touchdown. It's a sneaky under a touchdown, but I like it. Let's take -6.5 on the Los Angeles Rams. Total in this game set at 48.5 points. No weather to impact this game whatsoever. And I think this thing is going over because I think the Rams very comfortably get into the 30-point range. So let's go like 33-20. So give me a pretty strong over on that 48.5 point total. Rams win 33-20. Rams cover -6.5 and give me the over on the points. The San Francisco 49ers in a division matchup this week travel to Arizona to take on a Cardinals team who, like Washington that we just mentioned, coming into this week fresh off of their bye. The Niners have reached that 10-win plateau, and like I mentioned before, the only team to have clinched a playoff spot up to this point in the NFL. So look, the Niners are playing just as well now, basically, as they have all season long. Arizona, I would argue, is playing some of their better football on the season, but the scales here obviously are not equal when you're talking about the Niners up here and the Cardinals down here. But look, props to them. They're not really struggling too much on the offensive side. The defense is playing relatively well, at the very least, relative to what we're sort of used to seeing from the Cardinals over the last few seasons. Look, the Niners may have clinched a playoff spot, but they haven't clinched that 1 seed yet. They cannot afford to take their foot off the gas pedal here. They will not do it in a division matchup. Give me the Niners here all day on the road in Arizona to get the win over the Cards. Against the spread, however, I'm going to take a bit of a contrarian play here. Arizona is taking plus 13.5 as a very, very, very heavy home dog. I really like San Francisco to win this game, but they have no reason to blow Arizona out, and I don't think they do. I If Arizona was playing like terrible football, I would say, okay, yeah, they're probably going to blow them out. They're not. They're playing like league average football over the last month or so. So 13.5 points, it's just too many for me in a division game. Let's take that plus 13.5 on Arizona as a home dog. Total in the game set at 47.5 points. This is a pretty darn good number. I think it's right about where it lands. But let's skew on the over here because, once again, I think you've got a Niners team that has a pretty good chance of getting to 30. So let's look at this as like a backdoor cover type game. I'm going to go like 30-18. So still a comfortable win, 2 possessions for the Niners, but I'm going to take the Cards to cover that 13.5 point spread and give me the over on the points. And then we got one of the most interesting games of the week for me, which is the Dallas Cowboys in Buffalo to take on the Bills. First of all, don't I'm not expecting any weather to kind of play any role in this game, so we don't really have to worry about that. Why this is so interesting to me is I don't think the right team is the favorite. I really don't. This doesn't happen all the time, but this is one of those games where I genuinely don't believe that the team that is favored deserves to be the favorite. So the Buffalo Bills are at 7 wins. Their playoff hopes obviously are still very alive at 7 wins. The division is probably not. Like they're 2 games behind Miami, so chances are they're probably not going to make a run at the division, but playoffs are still a definite possibility. The Cowboys 10 wins. They've leapfrogged officially the Philadelphia Eagles for the lead in the NFC East. That's super interesting, but they have not clinched a playoff spot as of yet. The Bills are going to come into this game down one of their best pass rushers, and that's AJ Epinesa. Epinesa is dealing with a rib injury. He's kind of 50-50 as far as I know, but I think we're probably going to be leaning out on Epinesa, which is definitely a hit. Epinesa is having himself a pretty darn good season. The Bills are favored here by 2.5 points. and the wrong team is the favorite. So everybody's been saying all year about Dallas, oh, they beat up cupcake teams. They barely played anybody with a winning record. They haven't beaten anybody with a winning record. Da 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 da. What do we say now? They just beat Philly by 20 points. I realize this is getting into that like MMA math thing where like, well, they beat this team, so they definitely whatever. Like, but the fact that Buffalo beat Kansas City last week does not at all change how we feel about Buffalo, because it's not like Buffalo played well enough that they deserved that win. They only scored 20 points. And like, again, maybe should have lost that game if the referees were really lenient and didn't make that offside call. The point here is my feelings, or the feelings about the Buffalo Bills, should not have changed just based off of that one win. But the feelings about the Dallas Cowboys absolutely should have, considering what they just did to the defending NFC champions. Like, who are arguably playing better than they played last year. I feel like the feelings towards the Dallas Cowboys should absolutely have changed off of that win. The wrong team is the favorite in this matchup. I'm taking the Dallas Cowboys on the road in Buffalo to beat the Bills because the Cowboys are the better football team. So, Cowboys win the game outright. Obviously, going to be taking the Cowboys here plus 2.5 against the spread. That is a gift from Vegas. I appreciate that. Total in the game set at 50.5 points. Another pretty darn good total. I think I am going to take the over here. I think Dallas gets to 30 points. So let's go like 31-21, something like that. Again, Buffalo has not played great on the defensive side over the last month. So give me 31-21 Dallas. Dallas wins. Dallas covers plus 2.5, and give me the over on the 50.5 point total. Here we go, folks. Monday Night Football. The Philadelphia Eagles, the aforementioned Philadelphia Eagles, traveling to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. Now, Seattle comes into this game as a 6-win football team. Their playoff hopes are hanging by a thread. They are one of those teams that absolutely, positively needs to, like, probably win out if they want to have a chance of sneaking into that, like, final playoff spot. So they're definitely playing like there's no tomorrow. This is going to be a playoff atmosphere football game in Seattle this week. Philadelphia, they're at 10 wins. They were the first team to 10 wins. They have not clinched a playoff spot. They're no longer the number one team in their own division. So look, this is a dogfight between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. From this point out, it's look, best team wins. Your best, my best, let's go. That's what this is down the stretch. The Eagles come into this game on the tail end of back-to-back road games, and both of these teams are dealing with injuries in the secondary. For Philadelphia, it's one of their top safeties, Reed Blankenship. He has a concussion. He's in protocol. I would say 50-50, but probably lean out on Blankenship. And for Seattle, it's their top cornerback, Devon Witherspoon. Arguably should be in the running for like Defensive Rookie of the Year. He's dealing with a hip pointer, I believe. It's his hip, lower back. I would put him at 50-50. He seems like he's progressing fairly well, but either one of these guys missing for either one of these teams, and that does make a big difference. However, it's the uncertainty for me in Seattle's quarterbacking. Is it going to be Geno Smith? Is it going to be Drew Lock? I think we've seen enough of Drew Lock over the years to know that he is a capable backup / spot starter, but he's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. Then again, we could have said the same thing about Geno Smith before a couple of years back. So, we temper these things. But we know that the Philadelphia Eagles are an elite football team. They've been an elite football team all year long. They know at this point they're in a dogfight. They're in a big-time dogfight for either, could be the number 1 seed, could be the number 2 seed, could be the number 5. Like, That's basically their range of outcomes. And to me, number 5 for them is going to be unacceptable. So even though the Eagles, I believe, are struggling mightily on the defensive side of the ball, I still like them this week in Seattle. So give me the Eagles on the road in Seattle to beat the Seahawks. Sorry, folks, had a little cough there. So, like the Eagles to beat the Seahawks, the Eagles are laying 3.5 points here as a road favorite. I don't love having to buy that hook, but kind of the same as Kansas City. You got to believe that the Eagles are at least a little angry. So 3.5 points is not crazy for me for one of the elite teams in the league. So let's lay the minus 3.5 on Philadelphia. Total in the game set at 48, and this is another game that is going to be weather impacted in Seattle this week. High winds. They're probably expecting some rain in this one as well. So I think we're going to have to skew under on this one, under the 48-point total in Philadelphia, Seattle. Let's go like 24-18, something like that. I think it's going to be a competitive and entertaining football game, but give me the Eagles to win. Give me the Eagles to cover the 3.5, and give me the under on the point total. There you have it, folks. Those are your picks for week 15 in the NFL. Obviously, taking some upsets in there, coming off of a massive upset laden week in week 14. I hope you enjoy the games in week 15. That is it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. Enjoy the games this week. As I said, we will see you again for week 16, and best of luck in the first week of your fantasy football playoffs. All right, folks. That is it. The episode is in. I actually see that I'm going to skip those. YouTube was about to start rolling some ads for you folks, but I figure since the show is just about to end, let's just go ahead and skip that. There we go. So we got some upsets, I think, on deck this week. Brian was again warning me a ton of unders there. I think I might have, 11, 10 or 11 unders. I think it is going to be a lot of unders, but I just don't see a ton of points in a lot of games this week. Several key games I really like overs in, but a lot of them I'm not seeing where the points are going to be coming from. And again, the under is like 56% this year. So it's like the under is crazy. If you'd have bet the under in every single game this year, you'd be making money hand over fist if you were betting the NFL. Andrew, in all seriousness, what would you say of any NFL players or teams that could be fit as Mortal Kombat characters? Oh boy, this is a good one to get us out on. Okay, let's go here. Let's see. Shao Kahn. Shao Kahn is Bill Belichick. Definitely. Just evil. Just evil, but a winner. Um, like he rules all of Outworld. So we'll go with Belichick as Shao Kahn. Liu Kang. Oh, who's Liu Kang? I guess Patrick Mahomes. Trying to think of like who's got main character energy in the NFL. Probably Mahomes. Uh, Andrew, this is tough. Johnny Cage. Johnny Cage is gonna be. Who's cocky but mid? Johnny Manziel isn't in the league anymore. Um, Tommy DeVito. Can we say Tommy DeVito is Johnny Cage? That's a possibility. Ryden, who's old? Ryden's Joe Flacco. Ryden's Joe Flacco. Oh yeah, Roger Goodell as Shao Kahn. That would be a good option as well. I don't know, man. That's the best I got. That's the best I got. All right. It ain't going to get any better than that. We're going to get out of there on that. Thank you so much for tuning into the Week 15 episode, ladies and gentlemen. Best of luck with your picks. Enjoy the games. Best of luck with week 1 of your fantasy football playoffs, if that is this week. If it's next week, well, we'll talk about next week. Enjoy the games, and we'll see you in week 16.